Hey, hello. So, it is springtime here in California. Um, and I'm planning all these cuttings I had. This is a free Stenosarius queretanoensis cutting I got. And I actually got three cuttings from this. I potted one up already. I potted two up, and this is the third one I need to pot up. But I do not like planting. I don't like planting them when they're this crooked. Let me see. You see, so if I plant it this way, it's going to be hanging over. So what I'm going to do to straighten it out a little bit is chop it maybe where this rib shift is right here. This is called a rib shift. You see there's no rib here, and these kept going, and then another rib. Yeah, it's called a rib shift. So I'm going to cut it right around this rib shift right here. So the good thing about this is that you will have two cacti now. If you only had one cutting, you would now have two. So I'm thinking of cutting it right about here. This is a really thick cactus, just so you know. Let me look, you can see it's a really thick, mature cactus cutting. So again, I'm going to cut this, and again, because I do not like these really crooked cuttings. If someone offers you a cutting, or if you ask for someone for a cutting, you know, I do it all the time. People will ask me, hey, how big of a cut do you want? My answer is always the biggest one you're willing to give me. um, but ideally, I would like to pick my cutting and pick a really straight one, but that's not always the case. Often, the owner of the big cactus will say like, "Hey, I'm willing to cut this arm for you. Do you want this arm?" I would say absolutely. So I got this one from a relative, and this arm was in the way. It was kind of blocking the gate, so they weren't opening the gate for a while to their driveway, or they weren't opening the gate all the way because this arm was in the way. So it needed to be cut regardless. So I well, he cut it actually, but you see how crooked it is. So once I cut this, I'm thinking of cutting it at an angle like this, and then when I plant this, this will now be considered a mid cut, and this is a tip cut because it has a tip. And there's people who hate mid cuts because they look, they say, oh, they look ugly. But the good thing about mid cuts is that you'll get one, two, three, four. You could get many pups because it has no tip, so it needs a tip growing point or a few. So your mid cut will shoot out pups. Sometimes you get one, sometimes you get four or five. You get one or multiple per aerial. And so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do this chop with me. So like I said, I'm gonna give it the chop right around that rib shift right here. See, try to adjust this camera. So I'm gonna cut it right about, I said, this rib shift right here. All right, let's do this. It's a shame because I love the way the rib shifts look. Look at this. I love them. But this has to be done. If I chop lower, then this mid cut is going to be too short. And I don't have the best experience when you get a mid cut that's too short. It struggles a lot, and when it starts off, it grows really slow. So I want both of these to have a great start. I could chop up here, but that would make this mid cut a little too big. And I want the tip cut as long as possible. So one of my friends is like, "Oh, you should just chop it down here." No, that's too short. I need more meat on the potatoes. So yeah, I wanted to cut it here, but I'm thinking maybe a little lower. No, but you see how it curves? So here it looks straight, and it really starts to curve around here. So yeah, I'm just gonna give it the chop right here, right about here, I think. And I'm gonna cut it at an angle, because when you get mid cuts, you don't want them flat. Because if you have them flat, if it rains, the water is gonna stay stuck on top. So you want to cut mid cuts at an angle. Like if you're ever taking cuttings from a cactus, you want to cut at an angle so when it rains, water doesn't stay stuck, and then it could rot your cactus or get mold. So you always want to cut at at least a slight angle. So wow, I'm really contemplating. I'm really having second thoughts about where I'm cutting this. Okay, it really hurts to cut this beautiful cutting right here, but it's got to be done if I want a straight cactus. If not, it's going to be like really crooked. Okay, you can see how crooked this is, right? Maybe this isn't the best angle, but it's really crooked. So yeah, you know what? I just gotta think that the benefits outweigh the cons. The con is that I will have to wait another month for this to callus over. But I could plant this one now, because this one's been sitting here during winter, and it's completely calloused. So let's just go ahead and do it before I get I keep getting some second thoughts. So again, I'm going to cut at an angle. Let's do this. Oh, all right. So when I take cuttings, there's a few different things I do. I'm gonna place this cutting down right here. Oh, it's too close. Okay, so since this is going to be the top part of the cactus, I'm going to use sulfur to help dry out that wound, and this helps to prevent bacterial and fungal infections from getting into your cactus, because there's fungal spores everywhere in the air, and you don't want them landing here, and then they'll start growing, and you could get some rot on top, especially if it gets wet and it's damp. So very sparingly, I'll put straight powdered sulfur, and again, this is going to help it getting any kind of infection, and it helps dry out the wound. If you're getting sunny days, again, I'm going to plant this, but before I plant it, I'm not ready to plant this quite yet. What I do also, after I put a little bit of sulfur, what I will do is stand this in a sunny location. I'm going to put it right here. So right there. So I put it down here on my fence where the sun is going to help dry out that wound. And that with some sulfur, oh, that's going to dry in a day or two. But again, that's the tip. And you see, this is the way it's going to be planted, so it's at an angle. So after this dries and I plant it, when water falls here, it's going to fall right off. Earlier when I mentioned having short stumps that struggled, here's one. This is, I believe, a Huasticorum. And you can see that this is a really small stump. And it really took a long time. It struggled to root and get pups. Here's another one. Here's a cutting a friend gave me. It was a really small stump. Like, really small. It was maybe like 2-3 inches. Maybe 4 inches. And I planted it, and I mean, they'll grow, they'll root, as long as they don't rot on you. I mean, they'll root. If you put it in the right medium, it has the right conditions, they'll root, but it'll take a long time, and the pups won't come out super big and lush. But after the pup starts growing, it'll absorb more sun, and it'll make your plant stronger and stronger as it ages. But so if someone gives you a little small stump, hey, take it. It'll root and it'll grow, and eventually it'll turn into a really big and nice plant. But it will struggle. In opposed to, I don't know if I have any examples here. Yeah, I don't think I do. Yeah, but if you grow, all right, here we go. So these are slightly bigger stumps. This is a Mexican fence post, and you see how the stump, look at this, each of these, well, that one has a fourth one, so each of these have 3 to 4 pups, and they grew pretty fast. So this is an example of how some nice cuts will really shoot out some strong and fast growth. And I planted this one around the same time I planted this one, kind of. So you could kind of see you got some crazy big growth right there, and here you have a little tiny guy here, little tiny pup. So yeah, the bigger your stump, the more stronger your plant will be. Also the thickness. If you get a thick stump, your pups are going to be thicker, in opposed to getting a skinny cutting or a stump. Okay, so I put sulfur on that top part, and now I'm left with the bottom part, which I didn't book off here. Okay, there you go. Okay, so for this, the bottom, I'm not going to put just sulfur. For that, I have a mixture here, which I don't know if you could tell. No, you can't really tell on camera. But this is a mixture of sulfur and rooting hormone. And what I have found, and it's an old wives' tale, or within collectors, a tale within collectors, is that if you mix sulfur with rooting hormone, then you'll get the benefits of both. You'll get it'll help prevent it from getting fungal and bacterial infections, and the hormone, the rooting hormone, will absorb into the cutting as it dries, and it'll help it root faster. I believe it works, but there's always different growing conditions, different species. So I've never done an experiment of having it side by side, same cutting, one with this mixture and one with just sulfur. But I do this, and I do notice they do root pretty quick. But then again, there's a lot of factors in rooting cacti. And there's there's two different rooting hormones I use. This is kind of my go-to. I think this is kind of overkill to get number 8. You could get it for cacti. You could get away with number 1, which is a less stronger, a less potent formula. There's a number 3, there's an 8, and a 16. I think 8 is kind of overkill, but I still use it. And again, I used in this little container of sulfur, I put about a tablespoon. So sometimes for smaller cacti that I'm not going to use so much, I use a half and half. And there's actually another kind of hormone that's a little more economical. It's cheaper. And that's the one I use when it's a half and half. But it's not as strong as that Hormex right there. That number 8 is super strong. So I'm going to apply... I'm now going to apply... I'm trying to fix the camera here. Okay, so here I'm going to apply the sulfur and rooting hormone mix. Sometimes I have this little container where I'll just dip the cutting, but I couldn't find that container right now, so I'm just brushing it on. And again, when this dries, this is going to the rooting hormone will absorb into the cutting as it dries, and the sulfur helps dry out the cutting. So that's pretty good. And I'll move this cutting to a sunny location too, where the sun can hit it and it'll help dry it out. Today's actually is going to be a sunny day, but let me get my other glove. I need some new gloves. But let me get this beautiful, huge cutting. This is maybe a 2.5 feet. It's a really big cutting. Okay, so I now have the task of putting this somewhere where there's sun. So I want to put it here. See, I have a Stenoceras queretanoensis right here in the ground. And there's a bunch of flowers here, which I don't mind damaging some of the flowers. So here it is. I'm just going to leave it here for... There's no rain, so I'm going to leave it here for about 2 days. And let the sun help dry out the wound. And then I'll move this cactus to away from full sun and let it callus over and heal correctly. And after about a month, I'll go ahead and plant it. Some wood collectors, there's a bunch of collectors who have a rule of thumb of waiting a week per inch. And but that's if it's warm, if it's spring and summer. I think it all depends. I mean, it's all circumstantial. There's a lot of variability. If you if it's really hot, if it's like 100 degrees, I guarantee you this will dry in 1 day. But today's going to be like I think like 75 degrees or something. So I will leave it here for 2, maybe 3 days, because the sun's not that strong. So I'll leave it here for a few days and let this callus over. And the sun helps a lot. The sun will help against infections too. There's times if I don't have sulfur and it's a hot day, I'll just put it like this upside down or sideways where the sun hits it all day, and in 2 or 3 days it's completely calloused over. And I've actually we had a heat wave. It was like over 100 degrees, and I did this to a cactus, and I covered the rest of the cactus with the towel, just because I didn't want it getting too much sun, because it's a cutting, it has no roots, so I wanted to hold all the moisture inside. But I left the exposed cut area, and in 2 days it was completely dry. But I'm telling you, it was really hot. It was like 100 degrees or more, and in 2 days it calloused over. And after about 4 days I planted the cactus, and it rooted perfectly. But like I said, there's a lot of circumstances, and like some old collectors that say, you know, a week per inch. So this should be about a month maybe, but I'll wait 3 weeks to a month before I plant this. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, guys. Now let me just show you really quick. Let me detach this phone. Okay, so just let me show you really quick. When I do plant this cutting, look at how straight it's going to be. It's going to be beautiful. And if I wouldn't have cut this, it would have leaned over a lot. I planted one yesterday, which has a slight lean. I actually uploaded a video of this, so you see how it leans over, but it's not bad. And I didn't put it right in the center because it has a pup, and that pup will eventually balance it out and grow big like this. So that's why I put it kind of a little bit more this way. So there's a method to this madness. Here's the other cutting that I potted up, and this is a mid cut. I cut this for another friend. Like, he's my tocayo. Tocayo is what you call someone with your same name in Spanish, or I don't know if it's all countries, but in Mexico, which is where my family's from, if someone has your same name, you call them tocayo. So the tip of this was a decent size, and I gave that to my tocayo, Jorge, just like me, Jorge. Anyways, and let me show you. Here's the angle. You see the angle? So now if it rains, the water's gonna slide right off. That's why you always cut things at an angle, or when you're gonna have a mid cut, or when you cut your stumps. Like a local collector, great guy, he's my friend, named Michael. He lives near me, Michael LaFrance. He gave me this stellatus. He told me, you want the stellatus plant? Dig it up. And I had to hack it. I had to chop the hell out of it because it was so big and it was so heavy. But you see the cuts I made are all at an angle. And I put this in the ground last year, and look what I have now. I have 3 pups actually. Here's 2, actually 4. Here's another 2, 3, and there's another one back there. So this has 4 new pups. So even though it looks kind of ugly, being hacked up, cacti are really resilient, and these will grow many pups, and it'll be as amazing as it was before. And I did do a previous video where when I took this cactus, when my friend told me, I was like, he told me, you want any other cuttings? I told him, can I have a cutting of this one? And he told me, why don't you take the whole thing? because it's a little too big, and I did. And I gave about 4 or 5 cuttings away to friends, really big cuttings. And sadly, I have about 2 cuttings that had got a little bit of rot because of all the rain, and I didn't pot them last year. So here are some. I put some in the ground. I put about 3 or 4 in the ground, and these are some really big cuttings from that stump. There's another one there. I have about 3 more arms in the front, and these 2 were sitting in too much water, and they got a little rot here. See the rot they got. And this one was actually for a friend who never came to pick it up. So boo-hoo to you, friend. This cutting would have been perfect if you would have come for it, but you didn't, so too bad. I'll probably cut this here and plant that, or give it away. I could plant like a mid-cut here and a mid-cut there, and the rest of the rot, I mean, it's gone. I could cut that little arm off. This one I could do a few cuts maybe. I'm gonna let this one dry out completely. Let the rot dry out. I'm not gonna cut anything. I don't think it's gonna rot the cactus. I just think the rot is gonna dry up and it's gonna look ugly, and then I'll plant it or give it away. All right, I go off on a lot of tangents. I apologize. I'm not a good YouTube video recorder, but I love cacti, and I love sharing my cacti with other people. Here's a gummosis, and you know it's spring when your gummosis has pups coming out. all right, I'll cut it there. Cheers, guys. Here's a Eulychnia. Cheers.